Dune. So this is the long-awaited sci-fi epic by director Denis Villeneuve, starring Timothy Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Stellan Skarsgård. This really great cast. This, as we've talked a lot about this, is based on the 1965 novel and kind of series by Frank Herbert, who's a science fiction writer. This film has had a troubled kind of production in the past. Uh, David Lynch made a version in the 80s that's really bad. French director Hodorowski wanted to make like an 8 to 10 hour epic film about this, which there was a documentary of. That film never got made.
Hodorowski's Dune is the name of that documentary, and I really want to see it. I haven't seen it yet.
So this is kind of a storied property that everyone has wanted to see on screen. It was deemed unfilmable, and here we are. So the story is it centers on a young Paul Atreides, played by Timothy Chalamet, who is the heir to the son of House Atreides, and this is taking place far in the future, 10,000 years from now. Um, his family has been gifted or given the planet Arrakis, which is this desert like planet, and it has this resource called spice that's very valuable. They have been tasked with going to the planet, kind of ramping up production while also subduing or making peace with the locals, which are known as Fremen. So there's a lot of houses, or sorry, there's a lot of names.
Man,
Said
there's
it's a
so
lot.
many
It's a
names.
lot
Yeah.
like Game of Thrones. So I'm not going to try. I'm going to try not get too much in the
You're
weeds.
taking an admirable stab at it. I want you to know that. Go
Okay.
on. Yeah.
Um. So and the planet Arrakis has been taken from a kind of a rival house called the Harkonnen, who aren't real happy about the situation. So House Atreides goes to the desert planet Arrakis, and it's a very dangerous situation, politically dangerous. There's everyone wants them to fail. They have to somehow make peace with the natives. Essentially, they have to ramp up production. They have to make sure they're not getting stabbed in the back at the same time. So there's a lot of kind of political intrigue happening. Meanwhile, in the background is this kind of prophecy of this messianic prophecy of the one person who is going to come and kind of free the people, save the world.
The
This
Christ figure. That's right.
right,
Yeah.
and many people believe it to be the young Paul Atreides, Timothy Chalamet, who may well be the savior of cinema as well. While we're talking about it, uh,
Yeah. Yeah. He
so
might be.
there's a lot of characters, but that's kind of the overall. I'll just of the story. That's our setup. Again, this is far in the future, sci-fi. You got planets, houses, political intrigue, and lots and lots going on and lots to talk about. But that's what we got so far. So, Zach, what do you think?
So I really enjoyed Dune. Just off the top, I thought Dune was a ton of fun. I think Dune is a vast, expansive film. I think it sets so many. It builds a really brilliant framework for how I think a interesting cinematic universe can be built in a short span of time. It accomplishes a ton in its 2 hour and 45-minute runtime. Somehow it's like the shortest 3 hour movie I've ever seen. Like it just felt like it flew by. The only downside of Dune is that it does not quite feel like a complete film. It's lacking something at the end of it, and that will come with time, as Legendary Pictures confirmed today, with another film. But what is here is so rich and exciting and engaging for science fiction fans. If you like sci-fi film, you cannot miss with this movie. You have got to go see Dune. Now let's talk about why.
Well, I my 2 cents of this overall impression was I was really blown away by this, and I came into this kind of skeptical because I knew it was a big property. I knew it had the young Chalamet, and I was like, well, how good can it really be? But I did, Denis Villeneuve is fantastic director, but I was blown away by the visuals, by the kind of epic story. the soundtrack. I mean, it's really cinema on the largest scale. And I mean, it made me think of other films and how small they look in comparison. Like this makes Star Wars look quaint. This makes Christopher Nolan look small. You know, who generally is thinking on large scales. And I was just thinking how much better this movie is than some of those others that we know so well.
It's so unique in its presentation that way because yeah, you're right. It feels so grand. I mean, this does not feel like a small director making like a big feature. This feels like somebody with sweeping scope and vision building something grand. And I think a big part of the reason that is because Villeneuve has such a great eye for scope and scale. You may remember way back when Arrival came out, seeing that giant vertical ship amongst like people on the ground who were standing out in the field where it was parked, and you'd get this wide camera view where you see it together. You see people and we know the size of them, and we see these ships which are huge, and that immediate visual distinction between the size of something we know and something fictional and new draws a tangibility to it that makes it feel real. And that's what this movie is all about. Every time you see something big and large, there's something there to indicate just how huge it is, right? You'll see Paul Atreides look like an ant next to a giant city, or you know you'll see his father look like a small something next to a huge ship. It's incredible. It's incredible, and that's something Villeneuve has it feels like he's mastered here.
Right. His world building is so convincing. Again, this is the future, but again, it's not Star Wars. And I listened to a podcast where they said they specifically are not trying to look like, they don't want anyone to think, oh, this is like Star Wars. And they've done a really good job with it. I think one of the things, like you said, is scale. Like we're talking massive ships, massive massive fleets.
Yeah, huge shit, man.
Massive ships.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
fine.
You know, things in space, but also it's quite small in that it's dealing with a family, a mother, father, son, like these really close relationships, as well. And just it looks very military, much more, and that's something that I think really sets it apart from Star Wars. Star Wars is much more like, again, it's the space western. This is much more militant. All the different houses they have uniforms. They everything's kind of this dull gray. But like I said, they got these massive ships and machines, and that's really inventive because that's one of the alleged signs of really advanced super civilizations is superstructures, and that's what we kind of see in this film.
Yeah. Additionally, like you mentioned that kind of shift in color palettes. You know, the film principal photography for Dune took place in a couple of places, mostly Norway and Abu Ghraib, and then like out in the deserts out that way. And I don't know where exactly that stuff takes place, but what I do know is visually it looks fantastic. Like we get these wonderful distinctions. You can see it in the poster, and additionally, if you're looking at us on Facebook Live, I've got a screenshot there from the film you can see as well. Like you get these wonderful draws of blue and orange that really come out, right? The orange of the sand and the spice melange that's just floating there above the surface, versus like these rich blues of like a planet just off the edge of space, you know, or this unique color we see out in North, where they're filming out in Norway. But Villeneuve's ability to like draw visual contrast in the lens is phenomenally important. Additionally, brilliant costuming and set design all around. It makes these places feel so much more tangible, right? Every soldier is in a uniform that is cut for them, that looks like it's been passed down from generations of humans and tradition, right? And legacy that you'd see in these military outfits. The Fremen on Arrakis have these like I want to say almost like Tatooine, which again I should not be comparing this to Star Wars, but you know they look like these sand dwellers, right? Who have these rags on them and like all these goofy uh, trappings for survival. It makes everything feel so tangible. Like I know I keep saying that, but like it just makes it feel like something you could reach out and touch. And so often Star Wars feels like an amusement park ride, like or it feels like a you know
Like a cartoon.
a galaxy far far away. Yeah, but this feels like something different. And you're right, it could so easily fall into just looking or feeling like Star Wars, but it totally doesn't. Really, something future Star Wars creators should be looking at for inspiration is a movie like Dune.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's what I was thinking. I was when I was watching, I was like, this looks so much. This is so much more inspired than Star Wars is at the moment. You know, in 1977, Star Wars was inspiring, but in the last few years, it really hasn't been in a lot of ways. And this film thinks bigger, like acts bigger. It wants you to. I mean, just this again. We're going to talk about scope quite a lot, like the scope of the settings, the epic at hand, like these warring houses. It's incredible.
Additionally, we should probably talk about the scope of our cast, which is sweeping. I cropped it out on the Facebook stream if you're watching. But at the top of the poster, there's so many names you can't even like read them unless you're right up close to them. I mean, it's an incredible cast of characters here. Andy, I hope you have a quick list together in case I need to cut to you because I won't be able to get them all here. But some of the more exciting ones are going to be Timothy Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Zendaya, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Stellan Skarsgård, Javier Bardem, Dave Batista. I mean, the list goes on. Josh Brolin's in this movie, and everybody's actually pretty good too, which is another thing that's stunning. Everybody's well directed, whether they're in the film a little or a lot. Some are in the film a little less time, I think, to probably build to their appearance more in the second one. Others are really foundational here and likely won't be appearing in the second one much at all. It makes things feel like part of a whole, right? Part of a cohesive universe. This is
Yeah, a
the con-
fellowship.
yes. This is only the beginning, as is said in the movie and on the poster, right? This is the beginning of something more.
Yeah, the again, you have the epic scope of the setting, but then yes, you have these royal houses that have royal guards. Oscar Isaac is the Duke Leto Atreides, who's like kind of the king of his house, and then you have his wife, or not his wife, his I don't know what to call her in the in the book, Lady Jessica
Lady
Atreides,
Jessica, yeah.
Timothy Chalamet's mother. She's a very important figure. They have a very special and close relationship, and also strained relationship at the same time. It's very interesting, and you have Josh Brolin basically playing himself along with I can't
Jason
remember,
Momoa.
Jason Momoa, yeah, as kind of military
Duncan,
leaders. So
Idaho. Yes.
so you get a really interesting and diverse cast of characters in the desert people. And this is one thing I appreciate. The desert people are generally more dark skinned people, which is generally what happens with
Yeah.
people that have lived in the desert for years and years. So yeah, an incredible cast, and that was actually one of the challenging things about this film was getting everyone together, lining up schedules.
Yeah, like just trying to figure out the scale and scope of this through putting it together on the tail end at least of the pandemic. I'm not sure when principal photography wrapped, but I'd imagine they were probably running into February 2019 when they did, and that's that's gonna be when everything was shutting down. So I want to talk about the structure a little bit, and I don't want to get too into any kind of spoilers or anything. I think this is one of those movies you probably are best experiencing going in as fresh as possible. So already I feel like we're towing the line of what we should be telling you and shouldn't be telling you. But if you're still interested and haven't tuned out to go watch Dune yet, I think the structure of this film is really interesting. The first couple hours really is world building, and I knew going into Dune. I haven't read the book, I haven't seen the David Lynch film. Neither has Andy. We're both pretty fresh on this, so I probably should have said that at the top. If you're out of the loop on what Dune is, so were we. So good news. You're not going to be missing anything. But the first couple of hours of this are building the world of Dune. And I knew going in that that was going to be difficult to do. I'd heard before that like there's just so much detail that you have to be able to understand. You have to be able to understand these large political systems. You have to be able to understand where power is, what spice is, how it works, why it's important. All of that matters. And yeah, a show like Game of Thrones has the political trappings to produce that over the course of 4 or 5 episodes in the first season when they can start to introduce characters slowly over time. But Dune has to do that all in one feature, and Villeneuve does that brilliantly.
Yeah,
Everything's go ahead.
I was gonna say that we are, like you said, we're both very fresh to the property, and I didn't feel lost at all. And I was now I found out there's a bunch of lore, and people have said, well, this is why this is that, and that, but you can enjoy it without knowing all that. It's not a requirement at all. It makes it a little bit more interesting, but you can totally go in fresh without knowing anything about the world or having read the books, and you're going to enjoy it a lot.
Additionally, like you don't feel particularly overwhelmed because everything is paced very slowly, right? Everything is drip fed. It starts at the beginning, and you don't even open with like text on screen, which Villeneuve could not get away with for Blade Runner 2049. Even that he had to open with like a big text wall that tells you what's going on. This doesn't have any of that. It just starts off with dialogue and explanation. And I love that. And each character will take a little time throughout the film to maybe explain things as they come or tell you a little bit more about them. It all feels contextual. It'll either be Paul Atreides' father explaining something to him politically, or maybe his mother teaching him a little bit more about where she comes from, or maybe he'll be at school watching a film book, as he calls them, that are teaching him about the desert planet of Arrakis and the harsh things that live there. Like, it's all opportunities for the characters to learn more, and we get to come along for the ride. And it's all fed to us slowly enough and with a tight enough script that it never feels overwhelming or too confusing. I felt like I was able to keep up with everything without even really trying, and that's not an easy thing to do with a property that people say is unfilmable. It's really
Yeah,
hard to do.
right. I think the while scope is difficult in itself, I think what's even more difficult is just to do scope in story, to have an epic tale and tell it in a convincing way that you're not just rolling your eyes at, because when I realized that it would be very easy to be like, oh, look, another messianic figure. Let me roll my eyes. And that's not the case at all.
No, not at all. A couple other quick things because we're running out of time, and I would love to talk about it more, but I don't. I want people to go see it and judge for themselves. I want to talk about the combat in the movie. It's something that I noticed. Combat in the film is a little limited by the technology available in the world of Dune. People use these like personal shields that are colored blue to fight with hand-to-hand combat. Not a lot of guns or projectiles in the world of Dune. Really interesting. You get a lot of these fight scenes where you'll have multiple soldiers or people using these units fighting at the same time, and you get these flashes of blue and red up on screen. It's a really clever way to have like a unique choreography and fighting style that builds your world without having to just have like blood fly across screen or fly across the screen, or just have
Yeah.
kind of traditional violence as we all know it. Unique, simple world building. I liked it. I'm a fan. The choreography in this movie, the fight choreography is kind of neat.
Yeah, you don't have this kind of it would be very easy just to have like mindless gun battles
Of
where
course.
like side A and side B are just shooting around corners and at whatever. It's definitely not like that. And I read about why they kind of don't use firearms in this. There's a nerdy sci-fi explanation for it, but there is for a lot of things in this movie, but it's not important. You can just, again, you can go along for the ride without knowing all that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think that ultimately the script does so effectively. It cuts stuff out of the book that you don't need to know in a way that doesn't feel non-contextual. After the movie came out and we went and saw it a couple days after, yeah, you were sending me a couple links like, hey, in the world of Dune, this is a thing, and it's never mentioned in the film, but as in the rules of the film as you know it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, I get why they wouldn't use that technology, or okay, I understand why they would practice this ritual instead of that one. Really, really, really efficient screenplay adaptation. Hopefully award worthy, but we'll see come award season. And Andy, any other big thoughts? I feel like I could talk about it more, but I kind of just people should probably just go see it, right?
Yeah, amazing for score by
Oh my God, yeah,
Hans Zimmer. I've been listening to it on repeat. Definitely adds to the scope, epic scope of the film.
yeah, stunning score. And one more thing, Andy, how did we watch this, and how do you think people should go see it if possible?
We saw this in theater. I've actually seen this twice already.
Oh my God, I didn't know you
Went
went and saw it again.
went with I went with a different friend on Saturday because we saw it on Thursday night.
We did.
Then I actually ended up seeing it again on Saturday afternoon. So
Did you
I've
get
seen it
like
twice.
IMAX or Dolby Cinema or anything?
No, it was just another Alamo. But
Okay.
definitely see this in theater, and I'm definitely going to pay to see it a third time and go see it in IMAX. I wonder if they do a D box thing for this as well, because that would also be pretty fun. I think.
That's a good question. There's definitely a Dolby Cinema poster. So if you have one of those by you as well and you can't get to an IMAX, you can at least feel your seat shake when the ships take off, which is a great time. I might go that way. But I do need to go see it again as well. Yeah, I watched it in theaters as well. Andy and I went and saw it Thursday night premiere, Alamo Drafthouse. Support your local Alamo. And, we heard from some people that watched it on HBO and they were like, yeah, it was good. And Andy and I were meanwhile like floored.
Yeah,
like blew our hair back in our seats, like the greatest thing
like
we'd
my
ever
life has been
seen.
changed again.
Obviously, I haven't watched it on HBO, and I can't hop in a time machine and go back to a time before I saw it in theaters. But if you have the means, like based on what I saw, like, please go see this in the theater. Like I know there's a lot of advantages to watching stuff on HBO. I love watching stuff at home, and for some of these smaller features, especially some of the ones we're going to talk about this next month, coming up in November in just a second. Some of those you might want to just stay home and watch. It's fine, but like Dune, my God, like if you can go to the movie theater and watch anything in
Yeah.
2021, it might have to be Dune. I mean, my
I,
cinematic spectacle.
I remember when The Force Awakens came out, and I saw it over at the Omni Theater in Fort Worth, which
Yeah.
is like the globe shape theater. Like this needs to be on that screen.
Yeah, for sure. Like you just want something tremendous. You just want to be swallowed by that image.
Yeah,
Andy, any other thoughts for recommendations?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Dune?
Absolutely, it's definitely one of the best films of the year, if not the best film of the year. With definitely a lot of stuff still to come out. But I mean, this reminds me of big hits from the last 10 years. Things like Mad Max, Fury Road, Inception. It might very well be one of the best films of the decade, which is very early to be saying that. But it's tremendous. I've seen it twice. I loved it. I've been watching clips online and have the soundtrack. It's that blend of bold cinema. It is complex, interesting, complicated science fiction, but also there's good action. There's good spectacle. It's for everyone. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I highly recommend as well. Walk, don't run, don't walk to the theater. Dune is great. Like, don't watch it on HBO. Go see it. Take a friend to go see it. Take your dad to go see it. Take your son to go see it. Take your mom to go see it. Like Dune's good stuff. And I know it's not for everybody. Before I just say everybody should go see Dune. Like there are going to be people who are going to feel overwhelmed by the amount of information here, who are not signing up for some kind of like large grand epic. There are people who just want to go to the movies and munch popcorn sometimes. That's okay. It's not for everybody. But if you have the means, if you've listened to this review and are even mildly intrigued, go check out Dune. And if you're not intrigued, watch it on HBO, I guess. But either way, go see what Dune's about because there's more coming. Again, Warner Brothers is building a series. Reportedly, Denis Villeneuve says he wants to do 3 films. This is just number 2. This is the beginning. More could come.